Welcome to Earth, a Love Story, now coming to you through SpectreVision Radio, which I'm pretty excited about. I'm your host, Robin Lassiter, and I'm also excited to announce that Dr. Carrie Murphy and I are opening small group coaching spaces called Golden Threads. Have you noticed the world is getting weirder and wilder, and you're having to navigate whole new levels of complexity? Are you trying to keep your heart open to the promise of a better future for humanity while not turning away from the challenges we face? Us too. And for years, we've been finding ground in the groundless and cultivating strategies to navigate complexity with self-care, courageous compassion, and ethics. Join us for a 6-session coaching container to uncover your unique thread of sense-making, wisdom, agency, and inner knowing. Find stability and expansion while creating coherence for yourself and the field around you. Carrie brings grounded clarity from ancient Eastern wisdom traditions, and I share a bunch of stuff NHI taught me. These spaces will be capped at 8 participants, and if you're interested, you can email me at earthalovestory@gmail.com to get on the waiting list. It's going to be a good time. This is a solo episode, and I'm going to talk about something I've been calling the Great Reordering. For the past few months, I and lots of people around me have been experiencing the dissolution of things we'd thought were pretty solid in our lives. Long-standing plans and visions and projects and relationships suddenly evaporating before our eyes. We've watched as anything unconsciously built on a false dream or illusion or a not-so-solid foundation blew away in a puff of smoke. And in its place, what remained was a glaring truth in the light of day. This great reordering has felt at sometimes completely disorienting, at others starkly grounding. The thread running through it all is the revelation of some sort of raw truth we didn't know we weren't seeing. This is apokalypsis, and we are being tasked with looking directly at what has been concealed. From the deeply, intimately personal to the broadly collective, we are witnessing wave upon wave of different kinds of disclosure rolling through, and we have been for years. As I've been having conversations with trusted friends, others going through the same reordering, we're seeing evidence of a very specific type of disclosure that has its tendrils in our relationships, culture, institutions, and the power structures that influence them. This has all remained almost invisible up until now, but once we see it, we can't unsee it. And I think that this community, the world of experiencers, ufology, big and small d disclosure, spirituality, anyone exploring consciousness and phenomenal reality is uniquely situated to confront this together. We know what it's like to go through ontological shock. We have some ground and context for when reality breaks. And this very specific disclosure, the reality break we're being asked to navigate, is the revelation of rot, woven through every system of power and control. There is overt manipulation, conscious reality engineering, and world-building forces that have been operating invisibly and in plain sight. Energies and agendas entirely hidden from some while consciously crafted and wielded by others. We are being shown the roots of corruption, domination, and hardest for me to stomach, a deeply cynical dismissal and outright contempt and disregard for the heart of humanity. These energies and agendas make up the very foundations of the constructs we've been living in and unconsciously agreeing to for thousands of years. Part of this episode may land for some as hard and heavy, so listen when you're resourced or not at all. If you do want to engage with this episode and topic, trust that there is a turn. Every time shadow is brought into the light, every time apokalypsis strips away what no longer serves to reveal the raw truth beneath, we move through a portal, and on the other side we inevitably find novelty, possibility, and power. I believe in our power. In this episode, I'm exploring the dynamic interplay of intensely charged energies that are the hallmark of this rot. The triad of victim and perpetrator and rescuer, the interplay between subtle and overt energies of narcissism and codependence, and how these energies are baked into our personal relationships, as well as into relationships with our institutions, governments, and some, until recently, invisible systems of power. These energies are woven through everything, including the phenomenon, contact, mis- and disinformation campaigns, the worlds of capital D disclosure and ufology, the military-industrial complex, and more. There is a hall of mirrors here, intentionally weaponized, and coming to terms with that is ontologically shocking. I'm curious about how these potent forces almost seem to have an agenda of their own. I'm curious about the polarity of agency and consent. I'm curious about one time when I accidentally joined a cult. More about that in another episode, maybe it's a whole story. I'm curious about why I found myself in so many unhealthy relationship dynamics where I've fawned or people-pleased myself into oblivion, where I miss protecting myself from the tiger in the room because I didn't want to hurt his feelings by naming him a tiger, and because of survival-level fear. And now, I sort of feel like I have the tiger by the tail, and it's a lot. There's a lot of tiger here. And as I'm exploring and confronting these forces and shadows, I'm also confronting something more intimate and challenging. The moral injury that results with the realization that I and we all have unconsciously colluded with these systems and powers. Now, the veil is lifting, showing us things we barely know how to see, let alone integrate. But we're pretty badass. I think we can do this. I think in many ways that this is why we're here. And before I go too deeply into this, disclaimer. If you don't know me or my work, you won't know that I've spent the last 10 years deconditioning from the cultural energies of spiritual bypassing, spiritual ascensionism, purity culture, and the subtle and overt New Age, love and light victim blaming I experienced during decades of trying to figure out how to be a human on this planet. I've been in more than one abusive relationship. And the flavor inside of those relationships very often, for me, was, I'm creating this reality. If I'm just good enough or kind enough or loving enough or strong enough, spiritually convicted enough, if I think positively enough, good vibes enough, this guy who's pushing me and yelling at me will transform into my white knight and rescue me. But I'm not spiritually realized enough, so he's punching through doors. People and parts who were victimized, including my past selves, should be centered. Not blamed, not even subtly, which we can be so good at, especially in the, quote, spiritual world. We are quick to go to, this is all for my highest good, my soul chose this, me and this dude have a soul contract, this is my karma, as a way to not feel the impact and pain of the reality of what we've been through. I personally don't think it's possible to heal from this kind of trauma unless we acknowledge the personal victimhood, acknowledge that victimization occurred. Until we do that, we're bypassing. But when we do face and embrace the agony fully and well, the story continues. The wheel turns. We don't remain in the underworld forever. There are more perspectives to explore. So as we go forward, keep that in mind. That foundation of not blaming the victim is important. And equally important, there are other ways, other perspectives, other avenues of power and courage and agency available to us that we will need if we're going to get through this great reordering and remake this world into one based on respect, care, depth, joy, and beauty. As I've been exploring how these tendrils have run through my own experience of multiple abusive and codependent personal relationships over the years, certain questions emerge. Something along the lines of, I'm smart, I'm kind, I'm empathetic, I'm trying to be a good person. How did I get here? In those relationships, which, to be clear, include former colleagues and long ago partners in situationships, not my current personal relational landscape. I didn't see the signs. I didn't know I was unconsciously colluding. I didn't know until the horrible thing happened, and I awakened as if from a dream, surrounded by wreckage and pain. How did I get here? How did I not see what was happening? What the hell is going on? These questions in the personal realm are destabilizing enough for those of us who have experienced these kind of relationships. But anyone who's looking not even very hard can see the mirroring that's going on here in the micro and the macro. We are reckoning with a larger cultural moment. The apocalypse is happening in relation to so many systems of power, the control and manipulation wrought through political, economic, cultural, ecosystemic, and algorithmic landscapes. We are collectively attempting to metabolize the revelation of the Epstein files, not just the horrors of trafficking and sexual abuse, but also the dark esotericism, ritual abuse, and multi-generationality that lives at its core. At the same time, we're also reckoning with cultural engineering, the implications of a hybrid program, of potential genetic modification by NHI, of who we are and how we may have been manipulated at a global and species level, of the limiting or controlling, exploitation, and harvesting of human life force energy. How do we make sense of both the shadowed, unconscious material running through all of this and the dawning awareness that these systems and manipulations are also overt, intentional, and deeply cynical? Kelly Chase and I have been talking about this a lot lately, and she shared with me a framework that's helping me to make sense of things. There's a specific kind of pattern of abuse formally articulated by clinical psychologist Omar Minwalla, PSYD. Minwalla calls this integrity abuse disorder, or IAD. This is a specific type of psychological abuse related to agendas of dishonesty, deliberate deception, and the intentional psychological manipulation of reality. It is a relational disorder. It's not just about some kind of personal, individual, psycho, or sociopathic abuse, which for most of us is already inherently unknowable, but also names chronic, intentional deception, the use of overt manipulation and reality control, and it can include systemic, institutional abuse. Think cult abuse. Think narrative engineering. Think intentionally weaponizing trauma in order to control and distort someone's reality. This type of abuse happens both in one-on-one relationships, can happen in family systems, and, as we are beginning to see, can exist in the very fabric of our cultural structures. Part of the makeup of integrity abuse is the existence of what Minwalla calls a secret sexual basement. This is a metaphor for hidden, coercive, often eroticized power that sits beneath the visible relational system. This framework fits disturbingly well when overlaid onto the reality of Epstein's social and political networks. It reveals the depth and potential origins of the rot that runs through our society and world in large and small ways. This metaphor can be directly about sexual power and manipulation, or it can apply to many other hidden and coercive structures that exist in parallel to and hidden from the visible structures. It is a conscious attempt to control a person, a narrative, a population, in order to create dependency, extract value or labor, wield power, or, and I can't look away from this aspect, extract life force. I cannot unsee this. I cannot unsee it in the hall of mirrors that is disclosure, in the many misinformation and disinformation campaigns, in the desire to grab and control a narrative, in previous personal relationships, in the very foundations of the overculture. And again, the questions arise. How did we get here? How did we not see this? What the hell is going on? Okay, let's take a breath together. That was a lot. And it's been a lot for all of us, pretty relentlessly. I imagine that there are a lot of people who've already come to some kind of terms with what I'm talking about here. For me, it rolls in through deeper and deeper layers. Some days the shock arises, and some days I feel more integrated. Regardless, if you're feeling this, I feel you. This is why we need somatic work. If this is hitting you in the gut or heart, take a break. Take a drink of water, take a breath. Seeing what apokalypsis reveals touches our bodies, hearts, and minds. It ripples through our entire sense-making and reality scaffolding structures. It's a lot. And I wanted to spend some time creating that context and framework, not to disempower, not to inspire fear or ignite trauma, but to situate us in a landscape we find ourselves in, whether we like it or not. It doesn't need to define us, control us, or terrorize us. But until we see it and name it, it can, in large and small ways, in personal relationships and hidden in plain sight throughout our entire culture, do just that. So what do we do with this? Where do we go from here? Well, in the frameworks I've worked with for years and have put my deep faith in, first things first. We center and acknowledge any part of us that may feel activated, triggered, traumatized, or victimized as we go through the process of metabolizing these series of reckonings. We acknowledge our agony, our fear, confusion, and anger. We turn to grief as a teacher. We resource ourselves, find the ground, literally, the earth beneath us supporting the earth of our bodies, or the ground of trusted friends, our innate goodness, our innate strength, our ultimate divine nature, ground in whatever form brings us home to ourselves. And only after that, only once there is stability in the system, which takes as long as it takes, no rush, we may find capacity for a different perspective. One that intentionally steps out of and away from the victim, perpetrator, rescuer, drama triad. If you're not familiar with the drama triangle model created by Dr. Stephen Cartman, I've linked it in the show notes, but it basically describes how people unconsciously switch roles in conflict and perpetuate dysfunctional relational patterns. That's a mouthful, but this model was an awakening for me when in that terrible relationship with the guy who just wouldn't be my white knight, I realized I was casting myself in the role of victim. Worse still, I saw how when he acknowledged the victimization, he would feel terrible and move from the role of perpetrator to victim. I would seize the moment, all of this unconscious for both of us, become the perpetrator, and then act as the rescuer as he tried to ingratiate himself back into my good girl graces. As soon as I was no longer the perpetrator or rescuer, he'd step back into the role of the perpetrator and I'd become the victim once again. When I saw this, when I saw how I was perpetuating this cycle by unconsciously agreeing to it, I was shocked and sick. Seeing our shadows often makes us sick, and that's okay. It's a hard gateway to pass through, but there's clear, clean truth on the other side. I was more shocked and amazed still when I consciously chose to step out of every one of those roles, and the relationship and drama surrounding it simply dissolved. I took myself out of the game, and suddenly there was no game. Now, I'm not saying that we should just leave, look away from what apokalypsis is revealing. The opposite, actually. When the light of our awareness touches these unconscious energies playing out archetypal stories and themes through us, we take ourselves out of the game completely by refusing to be cast in any of the available roles. We can instead get very curious about these archetypal roles and forces moving through us, and when we do that, an entirely new world opens. We begin to see that we unconsciously play roles for reasons, because of childhood relational structures, because of structures passed down through our lineage from close and far ancestors, even from cultural structures that don't seem like they are personally ours, but have nevertheless landed in our bodies and psyches, installed in us in a million ways just by virtue of being born into the context we were born into. And just because we can see them as constructs, it doesn't mean they aren't real or don't matter. They are very real. affecting our choices, relationships, bodies, health, every aspect of our lives. But when we begin to see them as structures that exist in us but are not us, as we begin to understand that we are the spaces these energies move through, we can work with them in a totally new way. We each have a chunk of material, a collection of energies, constructs, personal and collective, which we are each responsible for. The content in here, in this psyche, experience, mind, heart, is mine. I didn't choose it. It's not my fault. It just is. This is my little facet of the diamond, and I want to bring it into wholeness, resolution, and peace. Let's say an energy arrives in my body that drives me to fawn for 3 years in an unsafe relationship instead of rolling my eyes at the absurdity of the dude getting up and leaving the room. Once I become aware of that dynamic, aware of that fawning, people-pleasing energy that's driving my actions, aware that I'm engaged in a dynamic relationship inside of the victim, perpetrator, rescuer triangle, then from that awareness, I can choose to make a different decision. It might feel terrifying to make a different decision. After all, this behavior likely kept me safe in the past. It may have kept my mother safe. It may have kept my great-great-great-great-grandmother from being literally killed. These patterns run deep and don't come from nowhere. Making a new choice from conscious awareness can feel like survival-level stakes, even when they're not. But by making a new choice about how to relate to this energy that has been unconsciously driving my actions, by no longer playing out the role of fawner and people pleaser, I can resolve that energy that's been running through me and my lineage and the culture for generations. I step out of the context completely. I make a new choice. The energy comes to its conclusion. And more radical still, when I can see that this energy is not what I am, but that it is running through me, I can see the energy running through the perceived other, the perpetrator, is also capable of resolution. I acknowledge not only a singular force running through me, but the reality that it exists only in dynamic relationship to the force running through the other. If I have the ability to make a new choice and resolve that force, if I can see that it is in me but is not me, then I can see the same is true for the other person. They may not see it, they may not know that yet, but it's true, which means I also release them from their role in the drama triangle. They are no longer my perpetrator. I am no longer their victim. We are both spaces that life is moving through, and we have enormous power and agency. When we energetically exit the construct that holds these energies in dynamic relationship, we regain our dignity, sovereignty, and power. We say, no, I do not consent. I will not live in these structures that create moral injury and integrity abuse. I see them, I acknowledge the impact, and I call back my power. There is powerful transmutation, a confluent transfiguration that occurs when we become the light of awareness, seeing the entire structure. It moves, changes, dissolves. The previous forms and structures collapse and release the enormous psychic energy they were holding. With that life force energy liberated, we can birth entirely new worlds. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It was nearly impossible to make the choice to step out of the abusive relationship I found myself in all those years ago, one of many of the same flavor. I credit the drama triangle framework arriving at the right time, my ability to understand it, and some unfathomable grace. I almost died in that relationship, and I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not minimizing it. I'm not saying it's simple. I'm saying it's possible. When we are able to make new choices, new futures become available. By taking this context, which can be accessed through shadow work, parts work, shamanic work, spiritual work, somatic work, we find our agency, our power, our choice. We no longer unconsciously collude. We no longer agree to the unseen contexts, lies, manipulation, and reality control that power structures may be trying to impose on us. We don't pretend the game doesn't exist. We step out of the game completely. So, here we find ourselves. We are awakening from a dream. We are seeing how we've been manipulated, controlled, lied to, and abused. We can see these structures are still in place. We are not looking away. We are not minimizing the pain, the trauma, the heartbreaking moral injury we all carry with our unconscious collusion. We do the hard work of cultivating wisdom, strength, agency, and discernment. We do it in community so that the weight of this doesn't land on any particular set of shoulders. We situate ourselves in our long stories, see how energies and archetypes converge in our particular and distinct facet of the diamond. We decide to resolve, transmute, integrate, or release these forces that have been running through us. With our psychic and life force energy restored, we create what comes next. We have the capacity, energy, and clarity to choose where we place our intention and attention, and we find ourselves in the broader stories of our souls and why we came to this planet at this time. To me, this feels like the great work of this particular apokalypsis, the Great Reordering, bearing the truth of what is being revealed, centering our suffering and victimization until we feel so heard and healed we have the capacity to see from a new perspective. From that place, we restore our individual and collective power, dignity, and agency, not denying the Hall of Mirrors exists, but finding in it our true reflection. We step out of the game and create a new one based on love, compassion, and wisdom. Thanks again to SpectreVision Radio. I'm thrilled to be here. And if you want to learn more about the new coaching container with me and Dr. Carrie Murphy, or to book a one-on-one session with me, please visit robinlassiter.com.